The acceleration of events with the discovery and extraction of the truth from every corner where they've hidden it shows that it's the middle link that gets worried first. They'll be judged and punished first, followed by top officials and propagandists. Honestly, I would do the opposite because these brainwashing gentle liberals have blood up to their elbows. There is a way to stop the flow of information, which is called the ostrich method. When the ostrich doesn't like what's happening around it, it sticks its head in the sand. The American press decided to behave in the same way.
Left.
The press finds the words and concepts, writes that it's technical. If there were no bugs or microphones, then you can't call it simple. Listening is something completely different. That's wiretapping, not eavesdropping.
What did you have? We can't use wiretapping. You see, the New York Times is very angry about this. I have to be careful. Public Broadcasting Service is very angry about this. They say Republicans shouldn't mention wiretapping, claiming it's not wiretapping. Then they call the whole story false just because we use that word, so we must choose our words carefully. And let's just say that they intercepted communications. At least 8 current United States senators,
We'll soon get to Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm slowly leading you to the main point, so please be a little patient. It is exactly this wiretapping of senators that will lead to Smith and then a bunch of others being prosecuted, just like Comey and Letitia James are being prosecuted today.
and now they are demanding answers. Senator Graham warns that Jack Smith's investigators should face serious consequences for probing January 6 phone records. They should pay a heavy price. Here he is on Fox saying, he said, quoting, "When Jack Smith was looking into my phone records and the records of other senators, I think he broke the law, and I think he should be held accountable. And I think those who set this up should pay, and pay big time. Again, you can call it retribution, you can call it payback, or you can just call it justice to make sure that this kind of thing, so it won't happen again."
We are not the ladies of the Lord. We want, first of all, for the criminals to be punished, and secondly, for this to happen. This punishment should be serious so that this never happens again. Here is Senator Graham on MBS, I think, yes, with the host who is doing everything she can to steer the conversation toward Trump.
Do you think that crosses the line between the independence of the Department of Justice and the executive branch?
I believe the Department of Justice under Biden has crossed many lines. I think that within 3 days after he announced he was going to run for president in 2024, he did this in 2022. But what about Trump? But the senators? So now I think the grand jury will deal with this. But didn't that bother you? Didn't it bother you that Letitia James brought charges that no one had ever faced before? That Ellen Braden brought charges, Trump brought charges, he had 90. Biden regretted not doing it before the elections. Jack Smith was monitoring my phone records and the records of 8 other senators. Jack Smith filed his lawsuit against Trump on October 24 before the 2024 elections, violating all protocols, just to politicize the elections. So maybe you're worried that people are being held accountable? That doesn't bother me at all.
That was an accurate explanation that punishment for a crime is normal. It's necessary in a society that wants to live by the law.
Kesh and Dane fired all the agents, which is very good. They're firing all the agents who were involved in this. But what I want to know is how they got the right to do this. I mean, what exactly happened that allowed them to use certain warrants? Here's the memorandum. Here are the names. I kind of need to lean in closer because the font is really small. But Mike Kelly, Lindsey Graham, Bill Haggerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Lummis. Oh, she's angry. She's checking her individual rights as if forgetting she's a senator. She's wondering, well, how did they violate her personal civil liberties? And Senator Marsha Blackburn, I mean, what the heck, guys, all in the name of so-called democracy. You guys were doing these incredible things. Bondi and Hawley are discussing it, but no one reported on it. I hate to repeat myself, but I can't help it. I'm persistent. Yeah, in this case, I'm just amazed, and I think it sets a very, very bad precedent. Because, we learned about counterintelligence thanks to whistleblowers, which was carried out in the days of Herbert Hoover. Right, up until the end of the 1960s, and they were spying on all kinds of Americans, including Martin Luther King. You can't do that. You just really can't do that. Really? And how could they do all this in the name of justice? You must be kidding, and no one mentions it except to say we're wrong for calling it simple. Listen.
Remember the FBI conspiracy to stop Trump. Very democratic to stop someone I don't like, right? Why? Because he's fat, he's a redhead, and he's not from our group. Well, not from our sandbox.
Peter Strzok, the FBI lover who was texting with Lisa Page and President Trump during the 2016 election. We'll stop him. He was fired, he sued, and now he lost his case. Oh no. And he was very unhappy with what happened to him, so he filed a complaint against America Garland. Originally, it was against Bill Barr, and this was back in 2019. He filed this 27-page complaint from Peter Strzok. And his lover from the FBI, of course, plays a role in this. But he sued Attorney General Bill Barr. He said, I'm very special and incredible FBI agent, and I've been this way for 25 years. Fridge stickers for mom. In June 2018, the FBI sought to fire this man due to his text messages. This is from his lawsuit. He's suing and says this: just because he expressed his political opinions about the 2016 presidential election and now about President Trump. Strzok's motion to dismiss blamed others, claiming it's illegal since he had free speech and can't be fired for that. Then he was fired on August 9, 2018. The FBI said, get out of here. The dismissal took effect immediately. Then they said, we were defamed. You said a lot of bad things about me, and you can't say such things because I have protected political speech. That's why I can write to my lover. Stopping the future president by using our agency to frame him, like with Operation Crossfire Hurricane, and trying to block a true win. And Obama was behind this, meeting with Comey, meeting with Clapper and the others. So this action is a lawsuit filed in 2019 by Peter Strzok. He says, my constitutional rights were violated. Let me go back and show you, since he also included relevant text messages. He says, yes, that's what we said. So, on February 12, 2016, he is texting with other people, including Lisa Page. Lisa G.A. is the FBI lawyer in question who was his lover. He says, Trump is terrible. I keep hoping this farce will end and people will just get rid of him. She sends this. G.A. says, God, Trump is a disgusting person. This is during the primaries. But Peter replies, still, he might win. It'll be good for Hillary. That didn't work out for them. She says, yes, Hillary will just wipe the floor with Donald Trump. He'll be a worse president than Ted Cruz, says Strzok Trump. She says, yes, I think so. I'm not sure. Oh God, Trump is an idiot, said Strzok. He's terrible, said Liza. Strzok says on June 11th, they totally deserve to go and demonstrate Trump's absolute fanatical nonsense. Why? For wanting to stop illegal immigration? The FBI says, you damn cheaters, Russian bastards, I hate them. She says, sorry, me too. And damn cheaters, Russian bastards, I hate them. July 18th, 2016. So they think the Russians are behind this, they set it up. He says Trump is a disaster, and I don't know how destabilizing his presidency will be. It was great until you released COVID. On August 6, 2016, he says, I really like this. Quoting Trump, he appears unable to feel awe, which is essential to admire or serve anything greater than himself. Wanting to know everything beyond yourself and truly respecting others, just empty platitudes. Would you expect to read this in a philosophy book? He's saying this to a woman trying to be poetic so she'll let him touch her. On August 8, 2016, as Trump rises in the polls, they panic and start to freak out. Trump won't ever be president, right? She says, really, no, he won't. We'll stop it, baby, on August 15th. I want to believe in the path you suggested for consideration in the deputy director's office, that there's no chance Trump will be elected. But we can't risk it. It's like insurance if you die before 40. This is clearly a setup. You could say these are just two lovers chatting, but now he's bringing his office work into it. Now he's discussing his government's authority and how they could use it to stop President Trump. August 15, 2016. This is an abuse of power. This guy should be in jail. We'll see if that actually happens in the end, but maybe not. I think the statute of limitations and other deadlines have expired for some charges or claims about what happened back then. This
It was a correspondence between one of the heads of the FBI and the organization's legal counsel, who, well, was his secret love, or mistress, as we would say. In the office of the FBI Deputy Director, that's the second in command at the FBI, they discussed how to stop Trump, meaning the future president, and if that didn't work, how to act so that his presidency, his work, and his efforts would fail. So he was strictly fired from his job and deprived of his government pension, and gentlemen, that's more than $1 million. And he started filing lawsuits, but he lost. Now, maybe the net cast into the abyss will pull him and his lover to the surface. So many vile creatures have made their way to the top and think they're much smarter than us. How do I know they think they're smarter than you and me? We elect a president and they say they're canceling our choice, meaning they know better what's best for you and me. Obviously, it's best to just give them our money and stay silent, but it turns out that we're actually smarter, and it seems much smarter than they are.
When people are asked who has the better plan, Republicans win on issues like crime, immigration, wars, the economy, even corruption. Democrats lead by 2 points in respect for democracy, partly because of black voters. That's,
Bill Maher, once an icon of liberal journalism, who decided that the truth still matters, even if that truth doesn't match your ideology.
Ironically, Democrats no longer represent what their name stands for. You'd think the self-proclaimed defenders of democracy would lead this movement, but recent polls show the opposite. Republicans are now more closely linked with democracy. It's not just a warning sign, it's a loud siren. This shows how Democrats are moving away from the core principles that once defined and inspired them. Rather than building trust with consistent convictions, they use identity politics, empty gestures, and constant internal disputes. Many Americans no longer view them as democracy's natural defenders. If this decline continues, Democrats will not only lose elections, but also their political significance.
The only thing...
significance on the stage.
They turn out to be not smarter than us, but just vile liars who consider themselves the elite. But I think of them not as the elite, but as filth, as worms. About Kamala, she hinted that she's planning to run as a candidate in 2028, not as an assistant janitor, absolutely not, but for President of the United States. And by the way, I'm sure there will be plenty of idiots who will go vote for her, thinking, of course, that they're much smarter than us. Well, for example, the far-left Rachel Maddow on Microsoft National Broadcasting Company, together with this very Kamala.
You're the first woman elected vice president and the first Black and South Asian woman to reach such a high office, nearly becoming president. It's hard to hear that he couldn't be a candidate just because he was gay.
No, that's not what I said, that he couldn't be on the list because he's gay. My thought as I write in the book, I made it clear that for 107 days during one of the most intense presidential elections in the United States, against someone like Donald Trump, who knows no boundaries, being a Black woman running for president of the United States and as a running mate for vice president, being gay with such high stakes, it really upset me. But I also understand that it would have been a real risk.
Kamala said she wouldn't take a gay person on the team, and when she was asked if she said that, the answer, as you heard, was, "I never said I wouldn't take a gay person on the team," and only because of Trump did she say she wouldn't take a gay person on the team. So the liberal fascists in the United States think we're idiots, so why are we idiots? Because we voted for Trump in particular, but Kamala's charms don't end there.
Here's what she said about the New York mayoral candidate and radical left activist Zohran Mamdani.
What do you think about him and his candidacy? And what do you think about the hesitation and concern of mainstream Democrats that he might win?
Look, as far as I understand, he is a Democratic Party candidate and should be supported.
Do you support his candidacy?
I support the Democrats in the race.
Of course. Look, if you thought Kamala had gained some wisdom, some class, some perspective in the months since she was decisively defeated by President Trump, you'll be disappointed. All she showed overnight is that she's a terrible sore loser.
But Mamdani, who wants to replace private grocery stores with state-run grocery stores like in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and provide free transportation, so one person rides but someone else, not the one who's riding, pays the driver for gas and everything else. Free college education means some study for free, while others cover costs like professors, buildings, and scholarships, even for those attending their 3rd, 8th, or 10th college. And who pays? Does he pay himself? No, his parents. Maybe not. So who? Who pays then? The one who went to work? And whose money is taken away so that the other person can study for free, live for free, by the way, eat for free, get medical treatment for free, and ride public transport for free. And if he gets a voucher, and we have that too for taxis, then he gets to ride taxis for free too. So it's free for him, but not so free for us. He gets the taxi. Well, of course, we, the ones who work hard and let ourselves get robbed, we look like idiots in their eyes. What's in that? What kind of harsh truth is that? And now let's move on to some absolutely incredible events in Chicago. At the Nuremberg trials, many of the accused said, "I was following orders," but they were still imprisoned for carrying out illegal orders. But it's the same in the United States Army. The Army will not carry out an illegal order. Well, someone will. But for the most part, United States military personnel know that they will be punished for it afterward. They swore an oath to defend the country, not a party, ideology, or government. So, the city of Petrov, Chicago, the city of the American miracle, the birthplace of countless entrepreneurs and pioneers, the home of notorious criminals and courageous defenders of the homeland, everything is mixed together.
Imagine the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are frantically bustling behind closed doors, nervously clutching press releases, desperately trying to hide the complete failure in their chain of command. Why? Because their own Illinois State Police, the very foundation of law and order in the state, have rebelled.
This doesn't capture the essence of what happened. The Illinois Guard decided as one that they would not follow a certain order from the mayor and the governor. They will? What kind of order is that? What's next? For 2 months, immigration authorities have been stopping and catching criminals in Chicago who came from abroad. Legal, illegal, well, legal immigrants. Legal ones are caught in a different way. I've already told you the Democratic Party protects illegal criminals for completely unclear reasons. The people just can't understand this. And they sent their paramilitary unit to stop what were supposedly legal actions of the federal government, and forbade the police and guardsmen from helping the feds. 2 days ago, 30 immigration officers were surrounded in Chicago on the street by a raging crowd of 200 or more people. There you go. It was non-white elders demanding peace and quiet in the neighborhood. It was 200 young people in masks, with clubs made from banner poles, attacking government employees who, of course, couldn't use their weapons. A call to the police set a dozen patrol cars in motion, rushing to help, but suddenly the police leadership ordered all patrols to turn around and leave. The patrol officers who were on their way there thought the situation had been resolved, but 30 minutes later they were sent back to the scene of the fight, And the police realized that the leadership had simply allowed illegal immigrants to beat American citizens for half an hour, leaving them without help on the streets of their own American city. But the next day, the chairman of the All-American Police Union stated that what happened was a disgrace for the police, a disgrace for any law enforcement agencies in general, and he urges all police officers in the country to help the federal agents and any Americans or guests of America when they are attacked. And the guards of Hanoi, editor. Together with the Chicago police, they made a decision. Here's a brief excursion into history. Chicago
became the epicenter of debates about sanctuary cities in America, a place where Democratic leaders are proud to stand up to federal immigration control. However, in an unexpected turn of events, the supposed untouchable alliance between Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson is falling apart. It seems the state police are out of control. What is this?
does it mean? It means they're not only helping the feds, but they've also started arresting illegals themselves and stopping them. Well, illegals paid for by the Democratic Party. I mean, demonstrations, riots, criminal activity, basically what's happening on the streets of Chicago. They stop it immediately. Something happened that the authorities didn't expect. The police and guards realized the order was illegal and started dispersing illegal demonstrations themselves without violence. It's clear and methodical.
Now, this shouldn't have happened. Pritzker and Johnson gave inspiring speeches about protecting all residents and vowed that the resources of the state of Illinois would never, under any circumstances, ever be used to assist immigration and customs enforcement agents who were sent to Chicago to enforce federal law. In fact, Mayor Johnson even signed an order prohibiting federal agents from accessing certain parts of the city. Of course, how he plans to implement this was never clear. But this was a key campaign promise for both the governor and the mayor, which reassured their radically left-wing base that they would be absolutely unwavering in their resistance to the Make America Great Again movement and its insistence on securing the borders. But that promise left many law-abiding citizens across the state of Illinois asking, what about us? What about public safety? What about upholding the law? The crime crisis in the city only got worse. The number of illegal border crossings increased, and ordinary residents of Chicago began to wonder who is really in charge here.
Who is running the city and how? The goals of those in charge are clearly not our safety. So then, what are they?
Are the far left in power? Law enforcement officers all over Illinois felt like their hands were tied because of this pathetic political maneuvering, which required them to literally ignore federal warrants, release suspects, and watch as their authority was completely undermined by the Democrats. Rank-and-file officers privately expressed outrage, fueling quiet resistance. All it needed was a spark. Well, that spark came after a massive wave of violent crimes directly linked to illegal migrants with unserved immigration and customs enforcement warrants. Local communities erupted, demanding action. Police officers, backed by their union, drew a line. They will no longer ignore immigration and customs enforcement requests.
In just one weekend in Chicago, 5 people were killed and 25 wounded in shootings by illegal immigrants. The victims' ages range from 16 to 62.
The Department of Homeland Security has just announced that Operation Midway Blitz has resulted in more than 1,500 arrests across Illinois. These aren't just random immigration violations, right? We're talking about dangerous criminals who were freely roaming the neighborhoods of Chicago. The Department of Homeland Security specifically identified pedophiles, violent gang members, and armed robbers among those detained. And as you just saw, they were caught with the help of Illinois State Patrol officers. Pritzker and Johnson were stunned. Their phones were ringing off the hook. Community leaders, bureaucrats, radical left-wing voters, they all wanted an explanation. And when the public found out that the patrol officers had disobeyed orders, political strategists in the state capitol panicked. The news spread across the country. Illinois' own law enforcement agencies rebelled. Why?
Why in Russia does the guard beat up old women and break children's legs? And why in Georgia are students beaten by thugs hired by Ivanishvili dressed in uniform? Why in Belarus does the police smash the skulls of protesters, obeying the orders of the top scoundrel or his representatives? And why did the military and police in the United States say no to an illegal order? What does this mean for the American people? Well, and the police, accordingly, are different from many others. You know, for example, when there's a war in Israel, reservist Israelis rush home from all over the world to take up arms. But when there's a war in Ukraine, for example, people are caught on the street and forced to join the army. Well, of course, they catch those who didn't have enough money to pay off the military commissar for an exemption or didn't have the skill to escape abroad. Now you might ask, why is it like this in one country and different in another? I don't know, it's just set up differently somehow. Like Zvarzy and the Illinois police. Wait, let me show you something else.
So according to Illinois law, being a sanctuary state, law enforcement cannot assist immigration and customs enforcement agents in enforcing immigration laws. Yeah, I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but that's what you get when you vote for Democrats, right? It's illegal to enforce the law. Basically, that's the Democratic Party in a nutshell. You can't enforce the law. Meanwhile, they use the law against political opponents, as they did with President Trump, bringing charges never filed against others. However, what the Illinois State Police are doing is making numerous arrests, but they claim that this is mainly done as part of their role in maintaining public order and safety around the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Detention Center in Broadview in the city of Chicago. Thus, these arrests are related to crowd control during protests, maintaining security perimeters, and ensuring compliance with designated protest zones while keeping order. And they make arrests with public safety in mind when they see violent actions among protesters and things like that, but they don't help the facts in any way. Now they can make these distinctions until they're blue in the face. The images, I think, are very clear. They tell a completely different story. State police officers are actually helping to set up fences and concrete barriers around immigration and customs enforcement facilities. They escort immigration and customs enforcement agents to Chicago jails, help arrest dangerous fugitives, and openly welcome these actions by federal law enforcement. The impact of all this is absolutely enormous. In a city where lawlessness was becoming the new normal, the rebellion of state police officers signals a return to common sense in law enforcement, even in the most liberal states. Hundreds of illegal criminals are now in custody. Public outrage over sanctuary city policies is off the charts, and polls show growing support for cooperation between law enforcement and immigration and customs enforcement. Pritzker and Johnson's authority is quickly fading. This moment in Illinois is a powerful lesson in how local law enforcement can force politicians to act, even in the bluest of blue states. People are rising up against an increasingly detached, distant, permanent political class, and the people are winning.
Of course, it's striking that, having gone so far down the road of turning United States citizens into mindless slaves, we managed to clean out this scum from those who rule us. The so-called elites. Well, who of course are smarter, kinder, and supposedly better and nicer than you and me. At least that's what they think.
The Supreme Court is about to do to the Democrats what the asteroid did to the dinosaurs. Total extinction. And the Democrats are in a panic because this latest Supreme Court decision will be the final nail in their coffin. This will doom the Democratic Party to permanent insignificance and ensure that they will never be able to harm the American public the way they did under the Joe Biden administration. Well,
has the United States Supreme Court ever had 5 conservatives a swing vote? And 3 liberals, or is it like that now?
But let's start by hearing exactly what issue they're ruling on and why this is such a devastating blow for the Democrats. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments in a few days.
In a Louisiana case that will determine if the Voting Rights Act stays in effect and continues to protect minority voting rights, preventing Republicans from redrawing electoral districts in a way that would secure them permanent power in the House of Representatives? Or will the Supreme Court step back and say times have changed? No more protection for minority voters and no restrictions for Republicans in the Deep South to engage in absolutely terrible mass gerrymandering.
Here's what you just saw and heard. That was a Democrat. In 1965, when there were issues with black rights, meaning there were still problems for black people and so on, a law was passed allowing the redrawing of districts for voting in Congress. Well, not geographically, but to group black people, Latinos, and other so-called minorities into single districts so they could have representation in Congress. Well, as they say, they wanted the best, but it turned out, as always, worse. Here.
That's why in Illinois and Louisiana, for example, there are such strange winding districts that go through the state specifically to include more black voters in the electoral districts. These comically drawn maps have resulted in Democrats being overrepresented in Congress. Since the maps were created not based on reasonable and fair population distribution, but with the sole purpose of including as many as possible. It was intended to correct the historical dilution of black votes through racially discriminatory maps and to replace them with maps that have racial preferences. To find out how many extra congressional seats Democrats gained from this legislation, listen to the next segment and prepare to be amazed.
If you divide the country into normal districts, that is, without thinking about who lives there, just honestly divide the country into normal districts. And in each district, the one who has won the minds, hearts, and so on of the people in that district will be elected. That is, people chose from those who are running the one they want to see as their representative. It doesn't matter if he's black, green, brown, feathered, or polka-dotted. They chose him because they liked his ideas, his personality, and his track record. It doesn't matter who it was, race, gender, sexuality, or physical ability, who cares? But this really doesn't sit well with the Democrats. They want to, let's say, tweak the Constitution a little bit.
All the districts that were historically created to protect black voters from, again, dilution, here and there in various districts and the loss of voting power. These districts will no longer be protected by the Federal Voting Rights Act. This could affect the party level in 20 or 30 districts.
And I suggest uniting all homosexuals in the country into one district so they have a representative, and all murderers, pedophiles, and thieves into another so they have a representative in Congress. Otherwise, how unfair is it that no one represents them there? Now, what does a change in party representation in 20, 30 districts mean? What does that mean in plain normal language, right? What about 20 or 30 members of Congress? Right now, it's the Democrats who will lose seats, and most likely Republicans will take their place. If there are currently 219 Republicans and 213 Democrats, 3 seats are currently vacant at the moment, so if there's a swing or shift of 20 to 30, let's say 25 districts in the middle, Republicans will have 244 votes, and Democrats will have 188. So instead of a difference of 6 votes, 219 to 213, it will become 56. This is deadly for the Democratic Party.
This was already discussed once in the Supreme Court. It was discussed in the last term in the Supreme Court. And initially, we expected the Supreme Court to dismiss it. But as the term went on, we became more and more nervous because the Supreme Court didn't issue a decision. Why? Well, at the end of the term, instead of deciding the case, they scheduled it for a rehearing, and that rehearing will take place this week. Please pay attention to this case.
This week? Wow. Why are the Democrats nervous that the Supreme Court might not rule in their favor?
Any law that, by its very nature, gives preferential treatment to a group of people based on their race is illegal and unconstitutional. I'm about to say something that may shock you, but hear me out. I truly believe that it was fair and right to implement these policies and laws of reverse racism, such as the Voting Rights Act, such as affirmative action after the Civil Rights Act. Did you need a strong leader, a firm government hand to push racism against black people out of institutions? Black people have gone from being, without a doubt, second-class citizens to becoming the President of the United States of America. We have officially defeated systemic racism, and I agree with that as well. There is no greater proof that systemic racism has been defeated than the fact that a black man was elected president twice by a majority in a predominantly white country. But the problem with the left and their obsession with identity politics and cultural Marxism is that they categorically disagree that the election of Barack Obama meant the end of systemic racism. Woke people believe that systemic racism is rooted in every aspect of society, even in things we don't think about and wouldn't consider to be racism. They believe that math is racism. They believe that going to the gym and striving for a slim, fit, healthy body is racism. They believe that things like punctuality, the expectation to arrive at work on time, clear speech, and pronunciation are all concepts of white supremacy. The talent of a woke person lies in their ability to claim victim status and point out racism or other injustices in every little thing. And that's the main problem with being woke. If you see racism, discrimination, and injustice in everything you look at, by definition, you can't understand or see anything good or positive in those things. And this leads to a mindset and a group of people who are constantly unhappy, bitter, and full of resentment. In their minds, white supremacy, systemic racism, and injustice can never be defeated without the complete and total destruction and reconstruction of the United States from scratch. That
will destroy your decay, creator of the world, to the ground, and then build something on its ruins, though no one knows what or how. Because, you see, everything that our democratic youth wants, and not only them, but all these Komsomol fascists in general, is to break things down. And then you might ask, well, you break it down, but what comes next? And then there will be cat soup, they will answer. Or even simpler, they don't have the slightest idea, because breaking is not building. They don't know how to think. And having received what we have earned, they really want it, of course, and are doing everything they can to get it. This is called royalism, Marxism, or Leninism, or Maoism, or Che Guevarism, or simply the philosophy of a bandit, whether from a big or small road. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is also mine because I want it. And after that, I don't care what happens. Let the grass not grow. Let there be a flood or even an apocalypse. I got what I wanted, and I feel good. And how you feel, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less from atop the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So if you want to get something like that, but give nothing in return, basically get something for nothing, then sign up for the Democrats right away. They'll teach you how. See you. Goodbye.